Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5 now of English 306. The first thing I'm going to do in this video is discuss the peer reviews you did this week, and then I will get into the details of what you will be needing to do for this coming week. Overall, with the peer review, I was pretty happy. My apologies for kind of how the system was a little strange and wasn't working on Blackboard, so we had to move it to the discussion board. Wasn't the ideal place, but I think for the most part it did work. Overall, I was happy with how most people did what was asked in the instructions, which was to analyze different people's letters with the specific rubric. So more or less, if that's what you did, you got full credit. There were a few people that instead of using the rubric just kind of wrote a few comments like that. So there wasn't full credit received, but still partial credit. So in the future, if you're one of those who uh, didn't follow the instructions thoroughly, be sure to do so. Most people got some good comments and feedback. There may have been a few people who weren't responded to because most of that had to do with people submitting it late. So if you didn't receive enough feedback, what I would recommend you do is actually look through the different responses that other people gave, and from that you should be able to glean some different ideas of how you could improve your writing. Or you're very welcome to, if you wanted to email anyone in your class and ask them if you want to do a swap. That is another option. So that's it for the peer reviews. Let's now go into what we are going to do for this week. So let's first look at the syllabus. We are here at week 5. There are 3 things listed that you should have done by Sunday noon, February 9th. The first is a response to chapters 6 and 7 on writing well. Same length as before, the 2/3 to 1-page single space response. And then your final appreciation letter you will need to submit. I also have on here a discussion board post. We are not going to do a discussion board post for this week just because I feel like the chapter 6 and 7 response and you finishing your appreciation letter should be enough. So that's something important to note. So the 2 things you'll be needing to do for this week are read chapters 6 and 7 and write out a response, and upload your final appreciation letter. Also, I'd like to talk a little bit about Zinser's chapters 6 and 7. The chapter 6 that you will be reading, part of what I think is important to understand is that William Zinser's background is actually in journalism. So he, in this chapter, is critiquing a particular style of writing, and you might notice that some of the examples he uses and the way he describes things is a bit outdated. Still, though, I think that this can apply to some of the pitfalls of how people tend to write today still, and might be applicable. So you'll be responding to that for chapter 6, excuse me. For chapter 7, it's a really interesting chapter on William Zinser describing the idea of usage, or what makes proper usage and what doesn't, which I think can actually be very culturally, socially influenced and relative to some extent. He talks about being on a board with all these people and how they were sort of these judges for what is and isn't proper. And I'm curious the extent to which you agree with their assessments or not, and just what you think proper usage does or does not dictate, or if you even think there is such a thing as proper usage. So just to be clear, I wanted to go through the prompts that I've written that I would like you to respond to for this week. The first one, in chapter 6, Zinser laments the use of journalese. What are some of the main issues he is frustrated by related to journalese? Some of the words and phrases he disparages are still common, while others are outdated. Can you think of any more modern examples of words or phrases that might fall under the category journalese? So I'm wanting you to take a more modern approach, a modern critique to the things he's talking about from the 70s and 80s. Along those lines, can you think of any phrases, slang, idioms that have come into popularity quickly, only to become out of style quickly as well? Then also respond to, in chapter 7, Zinser describes being part of a panel which decided the proper usage of certain words. To what extent did you agree or disagree with these different panelists' assessments? And then how does one exactly define or explain what proper usage usage is. Be sure to use specific examples in your explanations. So this is the prompt I'm going to have you respond to. This will also be listed on Blackboard, and if you need to reference it, and I'll also send this to you in an email, so I'll show that to you. Okay, so in addition to reading chapters 6 and 7 and writing your response and posting it on Blackboard, you are going to need to upload your final appreciation letter. So I thought it would be helpful for me to go over one more time some of the things I'm expecting and also what these different parts of the rubric mean. So this first part, given the letter's context, how well does this writing balance professional versus informal elements? Now, the extent to which your letter has professional elements in it or informal elements, whether or not that's appropriate, depends on your context. That's why I really am encouraging people ahead of time to write out some context to me, the reader, so I can know how to assess if, oh yeah, a professional tone takes over most of this, but that kind of fits the context, or oh, this is informal, however, that fits the context. Maybe it's a combination of both that works, but I won't know that unless I have context either within the writing itself or written before. Now, in your context that you write before the letter, if you have clutter, those sorts of things, I am not grading the context you provide me before. I'm grading the letter. So feel free to write as much as you want in terms of context. Details could be very helpful. The second part, Zinsser's rules. Essentially, all the things we've been learning so far in terms of Zinsser, specifically how to eliminate clutter, how to keep things clear, how to keep things simple and not convoluted, that's going to be important. So go through and look at each word, each phrase, everything, and make sure that it has some sort of function in it. Unique, original, this is just basically an idea of making sure that you are writing something that is taking the context into account and it doesn't feel just artificial and slapped on like it could be sent to anybody. Appropriate specificity. We talked about how having details, specific things describing what you appreciated about what someone did or who they are, can very much enliven and help out and make a appreciation letter meaningful. So again, depending upon the context, specificity will likely be something you'll have to have. The degree to which you are specific will depend on your context. And then grammar and spelling, I think, are pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so to sum up, this week you will need to read chapters 6 and 7 from William Zinsser and write a response and post it to Blackboard. Also, you're going to need to upload your final appreciation letter, and I recommend you have another look at it and look at it through the lens of the rubric and the criteria I will be grading on. As always, I will now walk us through how you should specifically do these things on Blackboard. So for your chapter 6 and 7 reading and response, you will go to assignments right here. Chapter responses, Zinsser's On Writing Well. If you go to chapters 6 and 7, here is the prompt I have for you to respond to. Click on that, and then you will write your submission, upload it, and submit it right there. Should be easy enough. If you go back to assignments, you'll see final appreciation letter right here. If you click on that, upload that, and submit it. Should be as easy as that. One thing I will mention as well is if you happen to need to look back at the rubric, if you misplaced it or something of that sort, if you go to course content /schedule, you can click on the appreciation letter rubric right here, and it should download for you to have. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions or concerns.